American Nepal Women Association of Greater Washington, D.C. Our organization is like, I wish we had our own office, but what we do is like we run from our homes, we do potluck meetings, and we try to cater basic needs of the society. We established in 2005, and we surveyed what would be the need of our community, and we came up with employment issues, education issues, health issues, especially to those newcomers when they come on diversity visa to the United States. And we try to cater to those needs, and health, became our major project now because we have a health team here. Dr. Vedya, thank you for coming, sir. Dr. Vedya is here because of him, and we have a very dedicated medical team led by our former coordinator, president of ANWA, Ms. Rita Tiwari, and we have Ms. Manju Samrola. We have two RNs, Manju Samrola and Sunita Shrestha, and we have Sunita Sivakoti and few more dedicated team members. They run medical clinic independently under ANWA banner. Also, it's run by our members. Our most funding of the organization is our members. Membership fee, and then from time to time to manage the crisis and emergency that arises in the society, whether it's domestic violence or taking care of somebody's death family or things like that, to somebody to go to Nepal, all that issues. We raise fund there and then and take care of that issue. I'm glad that we have a representative from SALT. I'm thinking in the future we may have to do something like, I know APLRC, I know DVRP, I know SALT. At least you have paid volunteers and some paid staff to run the organization. But we are still small, and one day we would like to reach there, and we will need all of your support. At the same time, I would also like to welcome all our community leaders and representatives. I may not see all of you, but I know Mr. Vijay Thapa representing ANA as General Secretary, and NOA, Mr. Sudhir Shrestha, and all organization representatives. Welcome, we are grateful. And media-wise, Sagarmatha Television, who have been helping us advertising our programs, medical programs and all that. Without media, we wouldn't do anything. We are really, really grateful, and I would really like to welcome and appreciate and thank you very much, Sagarmatha TV, dcnepal.com, Vishwa Parikarma, Nepali Post. If I miss any media, all the media, you are most welcome, and we are really grateful for what you do for us. What is the problem with the So, without any delay, I think we are already running late time. I would like to, request our today's. Before that, I would definitely like to welcome Vanita Sharma ji, who came all the way from Pennsylvania. She's been helping us in some of our domestic violence cases and immigration issues. She's an attorney. And then also we have a new member in the community who moved from Kenya, Ms. Samjana Thapa. Thank you very much for coming. Mr. Prem Samrola and all of you, and Mr. Krishna So, Vijay Saha, are one of the coordinators, first coordinators, and all founding members. Thank you so much. So I would like to request our today's speakers or panelists to the dais. Your Excellency, Dr. Sankar Prasad Sharma. We are very proud of him. He is one of the most effective ambassadors I have ever seen, and our community is really, really grateful. A few things to mention recently. He established Nepal Caucus, for your information, and then he re-established Peace Corps volunteers back to Nepal. And he also invited the media journalists in his place and familiarized Nepal to the American community. We are really proud of you. Thank you so much. He is one of our panelists today. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Surya Subedi, who is a very high level position in United Kingdom. Fortunately, I want to boost that. I was in his place. He was a great host in 16 years ago in Netherlands when he was a professor in one of the universities there. And he's here as the guest lecturer at the American University. And we are very proud to have him here. We are glad to have him here. And this is the first time we Nepali community in USA listening to him, to his keynote speech today. And the third speaker of the day, a woman, a lady, is Miss Priya Murthy from South Asian Alliance for, I know the full form, you will tell me later. SALT in short. So these are the speakers for the day. And then on this occasion of Women's Day, of course, we all know from human rights came to Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women to today, UN Women. Yes, women issue has been an issue. A human rights issue, always discriminated against. So last year we touched on migrant workers in workplaces abroad, and we tried to focus on Nepalese women facing problems in Middle East. I know as NRN we should always, we cannot leave that alone. We have to focus on that area. We have to definitely address this issue. This year, the theme of the Women's Day program we will talk about is Empower Women and Hunger and Poverty is our theme, and we are going. I know this particular theme covers all the areas because survival is the first. Survival is important before development or anything else. So we will hear from them. I would like to wish all of you a very happy Women's Day, and we will all together in solidarity and women discrimination. Thank you so much. And I would like to invite Ms. Madhavi Basnath-Karki, our former president of ANWA, to moderate this program. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I have some ground rules. Please sit down your telephone, and I will let you know the format of the program today. We have three speakers. We're here to celebrate International Women's Day. We have three speakers. After three speakers, then we'll have a question and answer session. So even if you have any questions, we have a paper, pen. Please write it down, and you can ask at the end of the program. I have already told Priya that the majority of people will be here from Nepali, so I will have a translator to translate in English, and then the program will run in somehow Nepali. नमस्कार, सर्वप्रथम त म सबैजना यहाँलाई हार्दिक स्वागत गर्न चाहन्छु। समयको व्यस्तताको बावजुद तपाईहरु सबैजना यहाँ आइदिनु भयो। हामीले वास्तवमा भन्ने हो भने अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय महिला दिवस भनेर कार्यक्रम सुरु वाशिंगटन भर्जिनिया मेट्रो एरियामा गरेको 2008 देखि। इन्टरनेशनल वुमेन डे सेलिब्रेट गर्नुपर्ने कारण चाहिँ के हो? व्हाई वी हैव टु सेलिब्रेट इन्टरनेशनल वुमेन डे भनेर चाहिँ हामी ऑडियन्समा आएको मान्छेलाई यसको के महत्व छ? हामी चाहिँ यो वर्षमा एकचोटी मार्चको दिनमा अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय महिला दिवस किन भन्छौं भन्ने प्रसंगमा चाहिँ एकचोटी जाउँ। जब 1945 मा युनाइटेड नेसन चार्टरमा नै इक्वालिटी बिट्विन वुमेन एन्ड म्यान भनेर चाहिँ इक्वालिटीको प्रोभिजन राखिएको थियो। त्यो पछाडि विभिन्न 1980s को मेक्सिको महिला सम्मेलन भयो। त्यो पछाडि 1985 मा कोपेनहेगनमा भयो महिला सम्मेलन, दोस्रो सम्मेलन। तेस्रो सम्मेलन चाहिँ नाइरोबीमा चाहिँ 1985 मा भयो र चौथो विश्व महिला सम्मेलनमा चाहिँ हामी मध्येका 4-5 पनि त्यो सम्मेलनमा हामी पुगेका छौँ। यी विभिन्न महिलाहरूको आन्दोलन चाहिँ कसरी सुरु भएको छ भन्दाखेरि 1902 देखि गार्मेन्ट वर्करहरूले सडकमा अमेरिका र युरोपका गार्मेन्ट वर्करहरूले इक्वालिटीको रूपमा सुरु गरेको यो महिला आन्दोलन भनौँ, इक्वालिटी टु अपर्च्युनिटीको कुरा होस्, चाहे शिक्षाको, चाहे स्वास्थ्यको, जेको कुरा होस् चाहिँ यी कुराहरू आज चाहिँ यो समय भनौँ न हरेक 10 वर्ष पछाडि चाहिँ विभिन्न बुदाहरूमा पहिलो मेक्सिको सम्मेलनले इक्वालिटी टु अपर्च्युनिटी कुरा गर्यो भने दोस्रोले 2-4 बुदाहरू थप्यो, तेस्रोले बुदाहरू थप्यो गर्दै हामी चाहिँ अहिले 1995 मा 12वटा बुदाहरू गरिसकेपछि 2010 मा चाहिँ हाम्रो UN वुमेन भनेर युनाइटेड नेसन्स एउटा सेपरेट महिलाको एन्टिटी खडा गरियो, जसमा चाहिँ चिलीको पहिलाको प्रेसिडेन्ट मिशेल बाचलेटले अहिले लिडरसिप लिइराख्नु भएको छ। र उहाँको मलाई यसपालिको 2012 को इन्टरनेसनल वुमेन्स अर्गनाइजेसनको थिममा चाहिँ एम्पावर वुमन एन्ड पोभर्टी, हंगर एन्ड पोभर्टी भन्ने जुन छ, उहाँको मैले सुन्दा एउटा कुरा बडा मलाई उहाँको स्पिचमा के राम्रो लाग्यो भने हामीले यत्रो आन्दोलन 1945 1975 देखिको आन्दोलन सुरु गर्दै 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 आज यो अवस्थामा आउँदाखेरि धेरै अचिभ गरिसक्यौँ भनौँ न। इक्वालिटी टु अपर्च्युनिटीको कुरामा अचिभ गरिसक्यौँ, अब भोटिङ राइट्सका कुराहरू सबै हामीले अचिभ गरिसक्यौँ। तै पनि संसारमा कुनै एउटा देश छैन जसले भन्न सकोस् कि हाम्रो चाहिँ महिला विरुद्ध हिंसा छैन भनेर। संसारमा कुनै यस्तो देश छैन भनेपछि यो कन्टिन्यू एफर्ट हो हाम्रो पार्टबाट। र हामी अडियन्स टिममा भएको जस्तो म किन मनाउन आइरहेको छु, वाइ आइएम स्पेन्डिङ माई टाइम, तपाईँ किन आइराख्नु छ नि विश्वका सबैभन्दा आधीभन्दा बेसी जनसङ्ख्या लिएर बसेका महिलाहरूको चाहिँ हक अधिकार र चाहिँ उहाँहरूको इस्युहरू नहेर्ने हो भने त समाजको प्रगति हुन सक्ने बाटोबाटै भएन। त्यसकारण अहिले यो आजको प्रोग्राम हाम्रो लागि अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय रूपमा नभए नेसनल रूपमा पनि हामीलाई इम्पोर्टेन्ट राख्दछ। किन भन्दाखेरि भान्सालयको अहिले नेपालमा भएको 2टा घटनाले गर्दाखेरि यो धेरै नै इट इज भेरी हार्ट ब्रोकन। 21औं शताब्दीमा आएर डिएसपी जस्तो पोजिसनमा बसेको मान्छेले आफ्नो स्वास्नी भित्ता ढकाललाई लगेर जलाएर मार्ने भनेको यो कतिसम्मको हिंसा हो होइन। एउटा प्रोफेसनल एउटा पोजिसनमा बसेको जो मान्छे जसलाई चाहिँ सरकारले पावर दिएको थियो कि तिमी अरूको पनि रक्षा गर, घरको मात्र होइन अरूको पनि रक्षा गर भनेर, त्यो एउटा के छ भने अनि अर्को अहिले डेडेनी महतो 40 वर्षीय डेडेनी महतो उहाँलाई चाहिँ विधवा 2 बच्चाको आमा खेतीमा काम गरिरहेको बेलामा गएर बोक्सीको आरोप लगाएर विभिन्न उहाँलाई अत्याचार गरेर 11 जना मिलेर कुट्ने चित्थोर्ने सम्पूर्ण व्यवस्था काम गरेर अनि जलाइदियो भनेपछि हामी भनौँ न 1975 देखिको त्यो इस्यु आन्दोलनबाट आएको मान्छेहरू आज हामी फेरि ब्याक ठ्याक्क त्यही पुरानो बेसिक इक्वालिटीको बेसिक कुराहरूमा हामी गइरहेछौँ। त्यसकारण हाम्रो आजको यो प्रोग्राम चाहिँ किन इम्पोर्टेन्ट छ भन्दाखेरि हामी आज वुमेन हर वर्षमा एकचोटि एक दिन हामी वी सेलिब्रेट विथ प्राइड र यो युनाइटेड नेसनको थिममा पनि के आउँछ भने हरेक वर्षको एक दिन चाहिँ तपाईँले पास्टको अकम्प्लिसमेन्टलाई सक्सेसलाई हेर्नुहोस् र फ्युचरको स्ट्राटेजी बनाउनुहोस्। कुरा त त्यही होइन। त्यसकारण यसको लागि आज हाम्रो बिचमा वन्डरफुल प्यानलिस्टहरू हुनुहुन्छ र मलाई एकदम खुसी लागेको छ हाम्रो डाक्टर शर्मा, हिज एक्सलेन्सी शर्मा, उहाँ चाहिँ नेपालमा धेरै नेसनल लेभलमा काम गरिसक्नु भएको, इन्टरनेसनल लेभलमा काम गर्न सक्नुभएको प्यानलिस्ट हुनुहुन्छ। यो विषयमा भनौँ न हामी कहाँ छौँ, कहाँ थियौँ, कहाँ जाँदैछौँ भन्ने विषयमा हाइलाइट गर्नको लागि हामीसँग अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय इन्टरनेसनल मेकानिजमको बारेमा बोल्ने डाक्टर सुविधे हुनुहुन्छ कि उहाँ आफै युएन रिप्रेजेन्ट गर्नुहुन्छ अरू कुनै उसमा भए पनि, तर what is this women's right going होइन अनि what needs to be done, हामी कसरी यसलाई अगाडि लिएर जान सक्छौँ। इन्टरनेसनल मेकानिजमको कुरा छ भने we have a Priya who works with South Asian Americans Leading Together organization. Priya works with the policy and analysis department, so she has worked with lots of women in immigration or domestic violence here. Let's not to take a lot of time. सबैभन्दा पहिला म चाहिँ डायसमा महिला दिवसको बारेमा जानकारी दिनको लागि यस्तो व्यक्तित्वलाई बोलाउँदैछु उहाँको इन्ट्रोड्युस म फेरि पनि गर्न चाहन्छु हिज एक्सलेन्सी डाक्टर शर्मा उहाँको पिएचडी इकोनोमिक्समा चाहिँ उहाँले पिएचडी युनिभर्सिटीबाट हवाई मोडबाट गर्नु भएको हो र 2006 सम्म उहाँले भाइस चेयरम्यान अफ नेसनल कमिसन प्लानिङ कमिसनको भाइस चेयरम्यान भएर पोभर्टी एलिभेसन जस्ता विभिन्न अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय अर्गनाइजेसनहरू लर्ड्स अफ इन्टरनेसनल अर्गनाइजेसन एसियन ब्याङ्क वर्ल्ड ब्याङ्क यी सबै कामहरूमा चाहिँ युएनडिपीहरूमा कन्सल्टेन्ट काम गरिराख्नु भएको छ। उहाँले त्यो मात्र होइन उहाँ चाहिँ नेसनल प्लानिङ कमिसनको चेयरम्यान हुनुभन्दा अगाडि पनि फरेन मिनिस्ट्रीमा बसेर इकोनोमी सम्बन्धमा धेरै उहाँका आर्टिकल्सहरू छन्। उहाँले 8वटा किताब अथराइज एडिटेड पब्लिस गरिसक्नु भएको छ। उहाँले चाहिँ विभिन्न भन्दाखेरि उहाँको दृष्टिकोणमा महिला दिवसको महत्त्व र भनौँ न हुनसक्छ भने यो त फेरि हामी नेपाली वुमनको फ्लाइट पनि छ फेरि ग्लोबल वुमनको फ्लाइट पनि छ गर्दाखेरि उहाँलाई आजको दिनमा अमेरिका नेपाल वुमन एसोसिएसनले हरेक वर्ष हामी बनाउँदैछौँ। त्यसमा चाहिँ उहाँको मन्तव्य व्यक्त गर्नलाई यहाँ बोलाउन चाहन्छु।
Thank you, Madhaviji. Thank you, Vishnuji, Madhaviji, and ANWA for inviting me to speak a few words on the occasion of International Women's Day in this August gathering. It's really an honor and privilege for me. I just would like to start from a small story in Nepal, because I would like to focus more in Nepal. Because I was the deputy chairman, that's what they call in most of South Asian countries, but in Nepal we call it vice chairman. I was the vice chairman of the National Planning Commission, and then I was given the responsibility to draft the first poverty reduction strategy paper of Nepal. Then I also had the opportunity to go and visit some successful countries. And at that time, one of the very successful countries was Uganda, and there were a number of other countries. And then I thought I have to do something in the planning process, especially in the area of inclusion. So there were 4 pillars in the first PRSP of Nepal, Poverty Reduction Strategy paper of Nepal. And by the way, that has been cited by the World Bank as one of the best PRSPs in the developing countries. So that was very good of them. But in the meantime, I think we formulated 4 pillars of development in Nepal. And out of those 4 pillars, social inclusion was one of them. And then when we had this pillar, social inclusion as one of the pillars of development, then how to draw the policies and how to implement or translate those policies into action. I think it's not very easy. If you see the Beijing conference, if you see the CEDAW, there are so many things related with women and that we need to address, especially in countries like Nepal, because we have full of problems. But in the meantime, because poverty reduction strategy paper is about 100 pages, our usual planning documents are 600 pages, 700 pages. You can write anything you want, but the whole question here is how to write it and how to translate those policies into action. So I think I was influenced by 3 things. One is my field trip to some of the successful countries. And the second one is the definition of status of women in the United Nations. As for example, I think United Nations, if we say the status of women, they say 4 things: knowledge, economic resources, political power, and personal autonomy. And these are the 4 things they define as the status of women, and then they evaluate on the basis of these 4 major variables. And then during that period, there was one book published by the World Bank, very good book, and then the author and the whole team visited Nepal. The name of that book was Engendering Gender. That was a very good book. I think still available, and it's an excellent book. And it talks about rights, resources, and voices, basically 3 things. And then what our teachers long time ago taught us is that if you go to the library, you get thousands of books on any issue, rural development, women's issue, and then you have to see the framework. And you have to see what are the core variables, what are the core areas where you can start thinking about planning and translating those policies into action. So when we started writing the poverty reduction strategy paper, we thought there are 3 things that we need to focus on the women's issue in Nepal. poverty, definitely, that's the whole document is on poverty. So we don't want to talk much about that because that's not separate from women's issue, or that's not separate from Dalits issue or excluded group. That's the whole issue of Nepal, and the whole document has been devoted to the issue of poverty and hunger. But on the top of that, I think we decided to have three major themes on the issue of gender. One is legal rights. Why I'm saying legal rights is that I think we have already found out by our studies that there are probably more than 75 laws and acts which discriminate women in Nepal. So we thought that if we cannot address the legal issues, probably we can go to the court, we cannot do anything. So I think that could be one of the issues that we need to address. And the second is definitely resources. When you talk about resources, there are two issues. One is human resources, and the second is economic resources. And then being a student of economics, I know how difficult it is to economically empower people. It's not only women, even to the men. So that's really very difficult, but I'll come to that point later on. But on the human resources, I think there are a number of things that we can do in the areas of improvement of the human indicators, especially of women. So I think that was number two. And number three was voices and empowerment, basically. Although I think at that time we still had the older regime before 2006, and then politically it's very difficult to do anything by the National Planning Commission or the bureaucrats. But I'll come to that point later on. Now, coming back to how to translate these things into action, I think that's very essential. When I was in the Planning Commission, we also developed a mechanism by which we can evaluate these policies annually, produce it, and then also discuss it with the World Bank and IMF. The reason I'm talking about the World Bank and IMF is that if you have the best PRSP, if we can monitor those actions, then we get more money from the World Bank. I think that was one of the incentives. When we finished writing poverty reduction strategy paper, immediately we got $100 million as a budgetary support. That was done for the first time in Nepal. And later on, I think we didn't get that one. So I think there are reasons to do that, but if we can do that effectively, efficiently in Nepal, that not only helps Nepal, but also we'll be able to mobilize more money from the donor community. Now, coming back to the legal issues, there are so many things that we need to address, but we started with the World Bank. Because again, I think the way the Nepal government works, I think I should not be telling that very frankly, but I'll tell you this today. I think if there is some incentive attached to some of the policy reform, it's easy to reform. I think you know in diplomacy, in development, that's how it is. Whether we talk about any countries in North America or European countries or even the international agency. So Asian Development Bank came up with the project saying that if Nepal does reforms in these areas, like address the issue of discrimination in the acts and regulations against women, then we'll provide X amount of money for projects related to women. So I think they identified about 75. 17 of them were more or less addressed and then addressed by the parliament almost immediately, I'll say after 2 years' time. 68 they have been identified. We still need to address them. It's in the parliament now, and hopefully it will be done soon. So I think that was one of the achievements after initiating this PRSP. Not only that, I think there are a number of other amendments that were done. As for example, the Citizenship Act of 2006, National Women Commission Act of 2007, Human Trafficking and Transportation Act of 2007, Domestic Violence Act of 2009, because some of these issues like trafficking is being regulated or monitored by the US government, because every year we have to submit the report. I think last year we submitted the report and Nepal's report was much better than expected. But the question there was, we have the law, we have the act, we have everything in hand, but implementation. So I think that was the emphasis given by the experts, and we are working on that. The second issue was, because the time is limited, maybe we can do some of the question and answers later part. On the second part, on the human resources and economic resources, especially on the human resources, what I found out is that from the various analysis, policy analysis, is that 50% of the discrimination can be removed, whether that's against gender or against Dalit, by education. I think that's the statistics we found out doing some surveys in Nepal. So what we thought is that maybe if we give emphasis to education in Nepal, that will help in reducing the discrimination against women. So one of the things what we started trying to do is definitely the Education for All is the program that about 20 countries, European countries and other countries, they put money in one basket, and the whole objective is education for all. And then we also started providing extra scholarship to the girl side and also the children staying in the remote area, because otherwise you cannot mobilize these people and you cannot bring these people into the school. But definitely our emphasis was in the primary school, because we cannot afford to spend money in primary school, secondary school, and also higher education. The reason why we were focusing on primary education is that the return on the investment in the primary education is much higher than the higher education at the public level. The private level, yes. I think when I am educated and when I am college graduate, when I am a master's degree, definitely my return and productivity will be much higher. But from the public perspective, from the government perspective, the return on the investment in primary school is much higher. So that's the reason. I think and the MDG goal is also just like that. We wanted to have 100% enrollment in the school without any discrimination. I think a lot of money has been spent. As for example, government has guaranteed that 17% of the total budget will go to the education system. Whether we increase the budget in the security system or not, that does matter, but out of the total budget, 17% will go to the education sector. And then that has helped a lot. And then the budget, at this point of time, the recurrent budget, out of the total budget, 28% goes to education sector in Nepal. Now, if you see the net enrollment ratio in the primary school, it's close to 94%, 93.6%. Very high compared to many of South Asian countries and many developing countries. And if we see the gender ratio, it's 1, meaning that out of these 93% school-going children, 50% are girls and 50% boys. That's a very satisfying number. And then we also started gender budgeting, meaning that what percentage of the budget will go to women issue directly. So 19% if we see last year's budget, and 45% of the budget goes in reducing the gender inequality or the gender gap. We are monitoring that every year. So that helps how we are doing in terms of reducing the gender discrimination and inequality in the country. If we talk about number of other things like 10% of BDC grant has to go directly to women's related program. There are a number of other things that I don't want to go into detail. But definitely in the area of education, scholarship program, education for all, these are, and the gender budgeting, these are some of the things that we have done very well. In the area of scholarship, almost from none in the early 2000, now it's close to 25 million US dollar goes to scholarship program in Nepal, especially for the socially excluded group, including the girl side. And then there are other programs, I don't want to go into detail. Now the third one is definitely related with the resources, the economic resources. That one is really very difficult. What we can do, I think if we meet the Minister for Women in Nepal, what they say all the time, it's without exception, we need more money. And what do we want to do? We would like to have projects in 75 districts. We have 75 districts in Nepal. They would like to have projects in 75 districts. Where? They don't know. So I think we used to have problem with the ministers once in a while, but they would like to have more money. But our emphasis was income generating program, micro credit and micro enterprises. Because what we have seen is that, like what Madhaviji just said, Boxilai Marni Bhanne kura, that can be solved only by only one weapon, that is social mobilization at the lowest level, village level. Then only I think people will be aware of those things, and we can stop that. It cannot be stopped from Singha Darbar or the cabinet decision. So I think what we thought is that we should give more emphasis to social mobilization. Now, in Nepal, there are more than 40,000 social mobilization groups dominated by women. I think this is probably one of the examples in most of South Asia. I think this is working well, but we have to do a lot in the future. Now coming back to one part, that's the voices, political and other participation. We were fortunate enough that we had this big political change in 2006. Otherwise, it would have been really difficult to have the participation of women in the politics and also in the parliament at a high level. Now, more than 33% of women participate. The share of women is more than 33% in the Constitutional Assembly in Nepal. And Nepal ranks out of 200 plus countries, 17th position in providing the women's role in the parliament, right? Which is we are very proud of it. The social mobilization group, the representation in the parliament, and also I think reservation in the bureaucracy. Although I'm not in very strong favor of reservation, I have different models that I presented, but somehow the reservation is much easier politically to address. So we also have the reservation policy for women, especially in the bureaucracy. I don't want to go into poverty. The reason is that, but I would say only one thing, that is poverty in Nepal has declined very significantly. From we had poverty incidence of 42% in 1996, that came down to 31% in 2003, and it has come down to 25% in 2009. But if we use the same methodology that we used before, the poverty incidence at this point of time is only 13%. But I think the experts changed the basket, and that's the reason why the poverty incidence is 25%. But it's across the board, meaning women, single women, excluded group, Dalit, Janajatis, far western region, mid-western region. I think this is something that probably the contribution of government is less, and the contribution of remittance is much more in reducing the poverty. The 50% contribution in reduction of the poverty is by the remittances, and remaining 50% is through urbanization and also lower fertility rate, meaning that lower dependency rate ratio, and also increasing wage rate in the country. But 50% contribution goes to this remittances. With what we couldn't do over the last 10 years, and especially even after 2006, we have not been able to increase the growth rate of the country, because during the high intensity of the conflict, our growth rate was only 3% compared to what it used to be in 1990s, 5%. And then even after the peace process was completed, I would say completed, was agreed in 2006, our growth rate has been only 4% per annum. So I think it really didn't contribute that much in reducing the poverty, but remittances definitely did. I think that has also helped to a large extent in reducing number of other indicators and improving some of the socio-economic indicators of the country. The last point, I guess, is on the results. I think what happened after the planning process, translating this planning process into actions, and then what has been the result. I think I'll just give you 4 or 5 examples. Fertility in Nepal has declined from 4.2 in 1996 to 2.4 in 2010-11. Drastic reduction. Now we are closer to the replacement level. Maternal mortality rate, it was 850 in 1990. Now it has come down to 281 in 2006 and 7, because maternal mortality rate is measured only once in 10 years' time. So probably we'll do that again in another 5-6 years. But this has been a dramatic reduction. Almost universal immunization in some of the areas, not all the areas, but the immunization rate has been very, very high. I think that this is something very interesting. No gender discrimination is observed in nutritional status, immunization against measles, and in the breastfeeding of infants and young children. Infant mortality rate and child mortality rate has declined dramatically, I would say. And life expectancy of women now is more than that of the male. I think there are a few things that we need to be focused in the future. The trafficking is still increasing in Nepal, despite the new law and other activities. Domestic violence, because they are not reported, still very high and increasing. The thing is that more and more people are coming out and reporting it. So I think that's the reason why the numbers have been increasing. Implementation of many of these actions have been quite weak in Nepal. We need to strengthen the implementation of these activities. And societal discrimination still exists. And just to give you one example, the girls' share in private primary school is only about 43%. Meaning that male children are sent to the private school, the female children are sent to the public school. Violence, rape, many of these things are not reported in Nepal. Still, it has started increasing in terms of reporting, but so many of them have not been reported. We need to do a lot, but on some of these areas, socioeconomic indicators, I think Nepal also received special prize from the United Nations and DFID, which is very good for the country, but we need to do more in these areas. Maybe I would like to stop here and then we can talk about these things again in the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, His Excellency. Actually, we already had a beautiful presentation from him. He touched base about the property elevation. He talked about education, and it is very heartbreaking to hear about the discrimination on education, that the girls are sent to the public school and boys are sent to the private school. Bandita looked at me, I looked at Bandita and I smiled. That's the situation still. There are thousands of things that we can do. When you were talking about education, I just heard in India, there is an organization, like the donor was giving money to a mother. The project is like to give money to a mother so the girl can go to school. And that money is not even given to dad, because I think the donor agency's point of view is like, if you give money to mother, then even if mother will save some money, she can feel empowered. I think I like that idea. I haven't done a lot of research. My daughter just went to India and she told me about this organization. I think maybe there are some things that we can do in Nepal. In regards that which whatever just happened in Nepal, social mobilization is a very important point. And you're right, like, सिंहदरबार लेके गर्न सक्दैन, पोलिसीहरु छ, कानुन छ, नियम छ, अब जाग्ने को त जाग्ने भनेको त्यही लोकल जनता हो, त्यही लोकल समाज हो. अनि अब जागरुकता कसरी आउँछ भन्दाखेरि जागरुकता when you are educated, when you have things to do. काम भइसकेपछि दसवटा कुरा हुँदैन अनि आफ्नो मान्छे एउटामा फोकस हुने हो कि. And also, you talk about the social mobilization and all these data, and then most importantly, the report of the CEDAW, where we're very happy to know that the development of women is showing, because Convention on All Form of Elimination Against Women was ratified by the United Nations in 1975, and Nepal is the party signed, and by signing those international conventions, Nepal, government of Nepal has assured United Nations that we will comply. Why we will become a member if you do not comply with their rules and regulations? Now we have a second speaker, Priya Murthy. Priya has been working as a policy director analysis of South Asian American Living Together, the organization called SALT. SALT is the only staffed South Asian organization in Washington, D.C. works on the policy level, the lobbying or legislative or administrative policies. I would like to hear more about your organization, Priya, and also at the same time how organizations like ANWA and other organizations, Nepali organizations, can be part of this mainstream of how we can be part of that policy change. Because if anything happens in Washington, D.C., legislation, administrative, we are affected too. Priya has a JD, juristic doctorate, she went to law school also, and master's in conflict resolution. I would like to welcome Priya here.
Hello, and And thank you to ANWA and Madhavi and Sharda for inviting me to this talk. I'm truly honored to be here and tell you a little bit about SALT, South Asian Americans Leading Together, some of the issues that we work on and we do in partnership with local organizations that serve the South Asian community, and also, as Madhavi mentioned, how community members can get involved in terms of bringing about policy change, particularly here in the United States. As Madhavi mentioned, SALT, we are a national nonprofit, nonpartisan organization based in Maryland, in Tacoma Park, but just right outside of Washington, D.C. And we primarily focus on issues affecting immigration and civil rights issues pertaining to the broader South Asian community, and of course including the Nepali community. And there are a couple of different strategies that we use in order to achieve this mission. We do policy advocacy work, engaging with legislative offices, engaging with government agencies to make sure that they're aware of the issues affecting the South Asian community. We also do community mobilization and community education so that community members know about what's going on at the policy level as well. We do coalition building. One thing that we do is we coordinate a coalition called the National Coalition of South Asian Organizations, which is a network of 41 local South Asian organizations across the country. And we also do leadership development to try and foster youth as well as others who want to kind of become effective leaders within their own communities. And as I mentioned earlier, we focus on issues within the United States. And through the coalition, the National Coalition of South Asian Organizations, many of the organizations that belong to it, in fact, the majority of them are South Asian women's organizations. So a lot of the issues that we hear from them, which help inform our work nationally, are really driven by the need to empower women and to make sure that they are not discriminated against in this country. And also I'd add that many of the organizations that we work with, while they're pan-South Asian organizations, they do of course work with the Nepali community that might be in their particular area. And there's one organization that focuses specifically on the Nepali-speaking community called Adhikar. I'm not sure if folks have heard of that organization up in New York, who's been doing tremendous work on behalf of the Nepali community there. So what I wanted to talk about was, again, more broadly to share some of the issues we've been hearing as it relates to topics of concern affecting South Asian community members. And some of these issues are, of course, unique to the Nepali community, and others, as you probably know, the challenges that different South Asian populations face often share similarities as well. So that's one reason why we try and use a pan-South Asian perspective in working on these issues. I also wanted to provide kind of a snapshot of the Nepali population here in the United States. And in terms of the different types of issues that community members are facing from what we've been hearing, really focus on two factors. One is immigration-related challenges, and the other is labor-related challenges for Nepali community members and also South Asian community members here in the U.S. And while they're not specifically on the issue of hunger or poverty, I think I probably don't need to say it, but you know, when you have immigration-related problems in your daily life, or you have employment or worker-related problems in your daily life, then that affects the empowerment of yourself as a woman, and it affects your ability to be able to provide for yourself and to provide for your family as well. And then finally, I'll share some thoughts in terms of how each of us can get engaged on these issues of concern and make change at the policy level. To start off with, and you may already know this, but one thing that we're really excited about is that the latest Census 2010 numbers from the U.S. Census Bureau have come out. And for the first time, the Census Bureau has really proactively reported on the population of Nepalis within the United States. And there's a fact sheet that I have on this table here, which kind of provides a demographic breakdown of South Asians in the U.S. But in terms of the Nepali numbers, there are at least between 52,000 and 59,000 Nepalis who live in the United States. And this is according to the Census Bureau. And the Census Bureau does the best that it can, but it is imperfect. And this is what we always say, is that this is an undercount of the population. And I see a couple of heads nodding saying, yeah, I think there's much more Nepalis who live here. What are you talking about? And you're absolutely right. And there are a couple of different reasons why this number is lower than probably the reality. And maybe you all saw this if you filled out your census form, which I hope you all did in 2010. But one reason is that, as you might know, there's no specific box under the race question that says Nepali that you can check off. So many people will check off perhaps Asian Indian. And what you had to do was actually write in Nepali, in addition to checking off some boxes in order to be counted as Nepali. And many people understandably did not know that they had to do that. So that might lead to an undercount. And another reason is that there's a significant undocumented population, more broadly within the South Asian community, but also in the Nepali community as well. Community members are understandably afraid to fill out government forms, so they may be undercounted as well. And so, but at least for the first time, we have some numbers from the Census Bureau for the Nepali community, and of course these to be buttressed by greater community research. And so based on these figures, at least from 2000, there has been at least 155% growth from 2000 to 2010 of the Nepali community nationwide. And the top 5 metro areas where the Nepali population lives in the United States, and again, this may come as no surprise to you, is New York, Washington, D.C., Dallas, Boston, and San Francisco. So we're right here in the heart of location number 2. So in terms of the issues that community members face that we hear about and that we try to work on at SALT, one is immigration. And one thing we like to talk about when talking about the South Asian community, or even specific populations within the South Asian community, is that South Asians and Nepalis possess a range of immigration statuses. Taking a step back, I myself, I'm of Indian origin, and many folks in our community say, "Oh, we're all H-1B workers," and that's really all we make up in terms of the Indian American population. But that's not really true. There's a whole host of different statuses that community members hold. There's one report that came out by ANWA, that organization that I mentioned earlier up in New York. They did a survey of community members, Nepali community members in New York City. And what they found is that at least 1 in 5 of their survey respondents were undocumented. So they didn't have any type of immigration status. So that's one thing that we really try and highlight, is that when the South Asian community is talking about changing immigration policies, to understand that there are segments of our community who have no immigration status, and that oftentimes when we're talking about legalization of undocumented workers, you might have an image of say that's just a Latino community member or someone from Mexico, but there's actually quite a number of folks who are from the South Asian and Nepali population as well. And then the second issue, which I'll mention briefly, but I'm sure that you all are very intimately familiar with, are problems with the diversity visa lottery program. And there are a couple of issues that we've heard from community members and community-based organizations around this, and I think I'll highlight it by sharing a story which recently ran in the mainstream press last year. It involves the story of Sunita. She's a 46-year-old Nepali woman, and she came over here on the diversity visa program. She actually got it through her husband, Vijay, and he was working as a civil irrigation engineer in Nepal. And the reason he wanted to come to the United States was that his son, who was 18 years old at the time, he wanted to come here and study computer engineering. So they said, okay, well, why don't we try and come over here and let's try our luck with the diversity visa lottery program. They ended up mortgaging their family home in Nepal to raise 1 million Nepali rupees in order to come here, and they won, and they came here. But the challenge is that when they got here, there was no type of support system that existed for them when they arrived. And this is different from other immigration systems that are here in the United States. For example, folks may come here under getting sponsored through visas for family members through the family-based immigration system. So you may have family members here who can kind of help support you while you're making the transition into the United States. Or if you come under an employment-based visa, the idea is you have a job, and so that can kind of help your transition as well. But under the diversity visa program, there's no type of no job necessarily waiting for you when you arrive. You may not have family members when you arrive. There's no orientation on how the United States works, let's say done by the State Department, which if you're a refugee coming into the United States, they have a number of challenges when they come here as well, but at the very least there's some agencies contracted by the government that help them kind of get oriented to this country. And so many people who come here in the diversity visa program are kind of left to fend for themselves and end up taking jobs that are very difficult, very low paying, and they have no type of structure to support them. And the other thing I would mention with the diversity visa program is that it's been placed on the chopping block by Congress a number of times. And especially this past year, there's been many congressional hearings, I shouldn't say many, there's been at least one congressional hearing where members of Congress have said we need to eliminate the diversity visa lottery program. And the rationale that they say is that we need to basically restrict immigration into the United States because that's how terrorists get into the country. And of course, we're, as a South Asian organization, we take that very seriously because there's often an underlying assumption that, folks from South Asia, folks who are Muslim, are terrorists. And then it's based on those stereotypes of who our community members are. But it also has effects for others who may want to participate in the diversity visa lottery program, but then see that there's legislation up there to completely eliminate it, which would of course affect certain segments of the South Asian population as well. And finally, very briefly, I'll mention one other issue, which is the lack of work authorization for H-4 visa holders. Many of you may be aware of this. If you are the spouse of an H-1B worker, you cannot work while you're here in the United States. Many of them are women. Many of them are in domestic violence situations and are not able to become economically empowered because of this lack of work authorization. And there's legislation that actually allows battered H-4 visa holders to be able to get work authorization, but the U.S. government has not issued regulations that actually make it real for women to be able to apply for this work authorization, so that's another issue. And then the second issue I'll just discuss very quickly, because I know we're short on time, is labor-related issues. As you may know, some of the most common jobs for many working-class Nepali community members are to work as domestic workers and to work as nail salon workers. And that's what one survey that Adhikar did earlier up in New York showed. As you may know, domestic workers work very long hours, they take care of their employers' families, they get paid very little, and they're often vulnerable to exploitation. And just to kind of put rather than to say everything that's so down and depressing, there are some glimmers of kind of positive things that have happened, including in New York, really led by Nepali domestic workers there. They were able to get the Domestic Worker Bill of Rights passed in that state, and it provides them with things like severance and overtime pay, advance notice of termination, 1 day off a week, holidays, health care, and annual cost of living increases. So that's kind of a bright spot and has really been driven by women who live these lives themselves. And folks may know that there was a recent victory that occurred where a Nepali domestic worker was able to win close to $1.5 million from former employers who trafficked her into the United States. So I just wanted to close by saying a couple of things that we do and a couple of things that you can do to kind of move on some of these issues so we can fight for the empowerment of women. One is to engage and help support some of the policy advocacy work that we do by weighing in with your members of Congress. And we have mechanisms at SALT, whether you want to do it by email, send a message to your member of Congress. If you want to actually visit your member of Congress, it's great to know that there's a Congressional Nepali Caucus. So they are supposed to be working for you. And even if you're not a U.S. citizen, they still have to be working for you. So it's important for them to hear about the issues that are affecting our communities so that they can use that in their policy change. And the other thing I would say is to share your stories. So even if you don't want to or have the time to meet with your congressional member, you know, you can share your stories about your experience here in the United States, and a lot of organizations doing work on the policy level. Take those stories and we run with it, because it puts a human face to the challenges that community members are facing, and it helps move the policymakers to make some change. So I'll close here, but I look forward to the Q&A. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ms. Murthy, for such a wonderful information. Such a wonderful information. Indeed, when I received the email from, I think it was the ANA, there was a list of, you know, the first time I saw data of how many people are here, and we used to ask people like how many people are Nepali, and there was always assumption going on, you know, maybe 30,000 or 50,000. At least we have some solid information on the data. Without further delay, now we have हाम्रो अगाडि विशेष अतिथि हुनुहुन्छ, very special person who is visitor to America. Dr. Suresh Subedi is a professor of international law in University of Hill, and he is currently now a professor of the visiting professor of American University. I know many of you have already heard about a lot of stuff that he has done in Nepal, in Europe, and around the globe. So, Suresh Subedi was in 2004, he was an OBE officer by of the British Empire, provided by the Parashar Mantralaya, I think Foreign Affairs, right? Yes. Foreign Affairs. Sureshji has done a lot of important stuff, and then now he is a special rapporteur of United Nations. उहाँको रोल चाहिँ ह्युमन राइट्स स्पेशल राइपोर्टरको रोल के हो त भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ ह्युमन राइट्स युनाइटेड नेसनको स्पेशल राइपोर्टरको रोल भनेको चाहिँ तपाईहरुलाई थाहा छ कम्बोडियामा खुमरुजको शासन भएपछि देश तहस-नहस भयो। त्यो तहस-नहस भइसकेपछि युनाइटेड नेसनको स्पेशल राइपोर्टरको उहाँको जब ड्युटीमा चाहिँ उहाँले he will be ह्युमन राइट एक्टिभिस्ट मात्र हैन, एउटा इन्टरनेशनल डिप्लोमेट, ह्युमन राइट एक्टिभिस्ट भएर फ्याक्ट फाइन्डिङ गरेर चाहिँ एउटा अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय कानुनको प्रोफेसर, not even like a professor or treaty, he advised the competent government on how to run on good governance. सुरेशजी यहाँ हुनुहुन्छ, युनाइटेड नेसनको स्पेशल राइपोर्टरको उहाँको त्यत्रो एक्सपिरियन्स छ। जस्तै मैले भने खुमरो शासनमा कम्बोडिया तहस-नहस भयो, मान्छेहरू भागेर गयो, फर्केर आयो, अहिले उहाँलाई चाहिँ त्यो देशमा कस्तो किसिमको हुनुपर्छ, न्यायपालिका कस्तो हुनुपर्छ, how the legislative will be, how the न्यायपालिका कार्यपालिका सबैहरूलाई गरेर राम्रो गभर्नमेन्ट कसरी बनाउनु भन्ने एउटा एडभाइजरको रूपमा पनि युनाइटेड नेसन स्पेशल राइपोर्टरले प्ले गरेको हुन्छ। र उहाँ चाहिँ सुरेशजी चाहिँ परराष्ट्र मन्त्रालयको सल्लाहकार हुनुहुन्छ, एसियन जर्नलहरू क्याम्ब्रिज युनिभर्सिटीबाट जुन निस्किन्छ त्यसको पब्लिसर हुनुहुन्छ। अब उहाँको तर्फबाट आज अमेरिका नेपाल वुमेन एसोसिएसन वाशिङटन डीसीले इन्टरनेशनल मेकानिजममा where are we भन्नु न, हाम्रो पास्ट अकम्प्लिसमेन्ट, हाम्रो सक्सेस र मुभिङ फर्दर व्हाट प्लान्स शुड वी नेपाली वुमेन शुड डेभलप भन्ने विषयमा चाहिँ यहाँ आफ्नो मन्तव्य व्यक्त गर्नुहुन्छ।
Good afternoon and namaste to you all. First of all, Madam President of this American Nepal Women's Association, His Excellency the Nepalese Ambassador, and other distinguished delegates and participants. It is indeed a great honor and pleasure for me to be here this afternoon, sharing some of my own thoughts about women's rights in general and the challenges for Nepalese women in this country. I would like to begin by saying that today is a day when each of us in this room or elsewhere celebrating International Women's Day have to make a new pledge. New pledge to do something for the people in our family, for the people in the society that we live in, and for the country we care about. So the challenges for the Nepalese women here is a twofold. To improve the situation of the women in the society that you live in, and also not forgetting the plight of the women back at home in Nepal. Wherever we Nepalese go, the bond is very strong between us and our mother country. Although I work and reside in the UK, but we are still working very actively what contribution we can make to Nepal. And this is an example that you all have assembled here today to discuss what we can do and what's the way forward. So this is the importance of this day. Although formally the day was 2 days ago on the 8th of March, but it was very right on your part to organize the event today so that you can maximize the participation. Well, the significance of the day. First of all, women's rights or human rights has been part of the international agenda for nearly 65 years. First of all, there was a challenge to promote human rights, to document them, to codify them, and to devise a mechanism to implement them. The process began, as Madhaviji said in the beginning, with the adoption of the Charter of the United Nations in 1945. Then one step further, in 1948 was the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted also by the United Nations. These were the two documents which enshrined basic principles of women's rights, right to equality, and number of other human rights. They had to be fleshed out, expanded on, and as a result of that one, we have in 1966 International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and International Covenant on Social, Economic, and Cultural Rights. These were the instruments which were designed to promote human rights globally. But again, there were specific issues for which specific measures had to be taken. And the plight of the women around the globe required that there should be a separate international legal instrument designed to promote women's rights. And that was CEDAW, adopted overwhelmingly by the member states of the United Nations, and it has attracted a huge number of ratifications. As you can see, the process of advancing the international human rights agenda has not completed. Then there were other groups, special groups, indigenous people, and number of other groups for whom there had to be a number of international instruments adopted. So what we have today, number of so-called we international lawyers call them hard law instruments and soft law instruments. First of all, His Excellency the Ambassador said, whether nationally or internationally, if you want to do something about something, you have to begin by enacting new laws. So international law making, as I said, which began in 1945, is still ongoing, but by now we have a substantial body of international law guaranteeing women's rights and devising a mechanism to implement them. And Nepal is a member of the United Nations, is a party to a number of international human rights instruments, had to enact domestic laws to guarantee women's rights. So as a result of that one in Nepal, and thanks to the openness brought about by the political changes that took place in the country in 1990, very many laws were enacted, existing laws were amended. To begin with, the civil code known as Mulk Ain was amended to ensure that women had equal rights, right to property and number of other rights. So what has happened so far, standard setting, both nationally and internationally, has been accomplished to a large extent. Fleshing out of those national and international standards has also been achieved to a great extent. I am not saying there is no more work to be done, there is still a great deal of work to be done, but a great deal has been achieved thanks to the foresight and wisdom of our political leaders and women's rights activists and human rights activists within the country. So what is needed now to make sure that women's rights are implemented? The following 4 things in my opinion. Number 1, legal reform. Of course, as I said, number of things have been achieved, but still there are a number of areas where some more work has to be done. There is another one, social reform. Social reform takes a long time. Prejudices take a long time to overcome. Biases take a long time to overcome. But that is a challenge, a daunting challenge for the Nepalese society today. Another one is awareness. First of all, human rights is something that you have to assert yourself. And that capacity to assert has not been developed that much in Nepal. Women who still are subjected to violence, discrimination, and number of other atrocities have not been able to assert their rights for a number of reasons, and many of them again to do with the societal reasons and lack of social reform. The fourth one is empowerment, empowering them, not only by amending or enacting new laws, but also making reservations for certain places in the state structure. Today there is a beautiful article published in the New York Times, how reservation has worked well in India for the masses of the poor. It's a long article, very well researched by a couple of people. How over the past 60 years, after the adoption of the Indian Constitution, reservation has brought so many people out of poverty, especially people living in poverty-stricken areas like Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. So reservation, of course, there are different models. His Excellency the Ambassador touched on. One may have different models, one may have different preferences. We can look at the models that exist in different parts of the world and can devise our own. But I think something has to be done. Of course, the record of Nepal is not too bad. Today, in terms of political representation alone, Nepal does exceedingly well. Nearly 1/3 of our members of parliament or members of the Constituent Assembly are women. We all should be proud of that achievement. But a great deal of work has to be done in terms of empowerment, social reform, and awareness creation. Now, what are the main reasons of violation of women's rights? Number one is a violence, political violence or other forms of violence. We all know the story, the saga of Maina Sunar, and a number of other women were subjected to atrocities and killed because the country was going through a period of political conflict during which violence was perpetrated by both sides. Now, thankfully, that has come to an end. Guns have fallen silent in Nepal. So this is the time to consolidate what are the achievements we have made thus far and what more ought to be done. So far as the United Nations mechanism are concerned, Madhaviji asked me to speak particularly on the international mechanism designed to achieve, number one, to guarantee, number two, to implement, and number three, to institutionalize the achievements made thus far. The United Nations system works in 3-4 different ways. Number one is, of course, the universal mechanism, known as the Universal Periodic Review. Until the establishment of the Human Rights Council in 2006, the whole human rights process was more political. Countries singled out their political enemies for greater scrutiny. If you were a political ally of one of the major powers, you had some level of protection. But thanks to the reform of the United Nations system in 2006, now each and every state is subjected to public scrutiny by the international community. All 193 members of the United Nations are subjected to 4 yearly periodic review, during which a state has to outline to the international community what achievement has been made, how they have gone about implementing the treaties that they have voluntarily ratified. CEDAW, ICCPR, and International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, and number of them. If you have voluntarily ratified a number of treaties, what have you done at home to implement these treaties? So you have to tell the international community, submit a report, a 4-yearly report. That's a universal report, universal periodic review mechanism. We also have periodic reporting system on the various other treaties, for instance CEDAW, in which the government has to outline to the international community what they have done in the country to promote women's rights. Then the third mechanism is the mechanism of the United Nations Special Rapporteur. I'm one of them for the country known as Cambodia. There are 2 types of special rapporteurs. One is called thematic special rapporteurs. They have a global mandate but on a narrow human rights theme. And there is another type of special rapporteurs known as country mandate holders. There are only 8-9 of us for some of the most difficult countries. Cambodia, North Korea, Myanmar or Burma, Somalia, Sudan, and recently 2 new mandates were created, one for Iran and one for Syria. We have a very broad mandate to look at all sorts of human rights issues, wide range of human rights issues violations that have taken place in the country, go and carry out field missions. I do go to Cambodia at least 3 times a year and interact with a large group of people, women, children, elderly, those who are vulnerable in the society. The weakest of the weak, they can come to see us and express their grievances. After listening to them, after finding out as much as possible, then we represent their interest to the government and tell the Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, Home Minister what's going on in the country, what is unacceptable. Because Cambodia, just an example, is like Nepal, a developing Asian country. It has also ratified a number of international human rights instruments, and how the country has been able to live up to the expectations of the people, live up to the promises the government made to its own people and to the international community. This is a rather unique mechanism. That's what is known as the special procedures within the United Nations system. As many of you would know, in international law, states are not supposed to interfere in the internal affairs of another sovereign state. But there is an exception. The exception are we, the special rapporteurs. We can go to a country for which we have a mandate and pierce the national corporate veil and then look into the internal matters. Because human rights issue is a unique issue, different issue. In no area of international relations you have that power. So the special rapporteurs have such a power, even regardless of the provision in paragraph 7 of Article 2 of the United Nations Charter, not to interfere in internal affairs, but given such a high status in international relations, that so far as women's rights is concerned, human rights is concerned, no, the international community has a right to intervene. And that method of intervention are the special rapporteurs. So we can go to the country, but I will give you an example. Once I went to a province. When I go to Cambodia, I do not confine myself to the capital city Phnom Penh. I do venture out to the provinces. Once I had a meeting with a governor of a province, nice diplomatic meeting. Then after that I said, I would like to proceed from there to the detention center. Not giving them any warning, not giving them any idea that I may be visiting that place. So within 10 minutes I was able to drive in a convoy of 2-3 cars, because for security reasons United Nations provides us security, comes from Geneva, some local security, and then I was able to visit the detention center and see for myself what was the real situation. Not giving any opportunity to the government to cover up. So that's the activity we can carry out. That's a very effective mechanism. During the direct rule by the king in Nepal, the United Nations came to Nepal as well. As you know, the OSHR had a field office. Still the office is there. And if the situation had deteriorated, it was possible that Nepal would also have witnessed the appointment of a special rapporteur for the country with such intrusive powers, if you like. So that's the mechanism that exists within the United Nations system. Not many people do appreciate the work that goes on within the United Nations system. A huge amount of work goes on. Just here, treaty bodies, United Nations charter bodies, and special bodies like the United Nations Special Rapporteur. And as a result of that one, we have been able to make a difference in the life of the women around the globe. Making a small difference, in my opinion, is better than making no difference. You cannot make a big difference, doesn't mean that you have to stop making a small difference. That's the approach that the United Nations has taken. United Nations is a body, political body consisting of sovereign states. It is not a use of force, in very rare cases, Iraq, Afghanistan, so on and so forth, but by and large it's a consensual process. Cajoling, persuading and arguing with reason. This is what you have to do to advance human civilization. Advancing human civilization was the objective, one of the objectives of the United Nations. To implement that one, you have a number of laws, international laws, known as international treaties. These treaties, to make sure that they are implemented as rigorously as possible in any member states of the United Nations. Now, returning back to the situation in Nepal. Nepal, as I said, is a party to a number of international human rights instruments. Nepal has also enacted a number of new laws, amended the existing laws, but in reality, as Madhaviji pointed out, is still some of the events that have taken place in Nepal in the recent past make us think, where are we? what's gone wrong in our society. Why women are still being killed? Saying that they are boxy or witches or some other, based on antiquated concepts amongst men and even amongst women in the society. So that's the challenge for all of us, to address that in spite of these laws being enacted, in spite of these international mechanisms at work, how we can address this situation and make the life of women better in the past. That's the challenge for all of us today. And today is the day, again, as I said at the beginning, to make a new pledge and to convey the message. One thing which I am not happy about with the Nepalese diaspora, many of us have come and lived in a very advanced country like this one. I work and live in the UK, and today I am also one of the advisors to the British Secretary of State on human rights issues. We have learned so much. Our challenge is not to follow the leaders, but to tell the leaders, whether political leaders or social leaders or other leaders in the society, what we have seen here, how other societies have advanced. Nepal will find it difficult to advance economically if women are not empowered. Nearly 51% of the population, although I don't have the latest exact figures, but they are slightly in the majority. And I was very pleased to hear a detailed account of the endeavors made by the National Planning Commission as part of poverty alleviation program. A commendable work has gone on, but there is so much to be done. And many of us in this room are privileged in the sense that we are living in a very advanced country. So people in our own society, as you rightly said in your presentation, female members in our own community here, in the United States, in the UK or any other country, should not suffer from discrimination, should not suffer from atrocities perpetrated to them, either by their own family members or by other members. That is simply unacceptable in our society. If we have come to live here, we have to learn to live with the values in this society. I go around the world as an academic to speak at various international diplomatic conferences. People ask me, would you please define us? What do you mean by the UK? Although many people may get different answers, but my answer to them is a country of laws. So many laws. And these laws are implemented in a very effective manner. If I were to introduce the United States elsewhere, I would say the same thing. It's a country of laws. Congress has been busy here. Although we have to scrutinize the laws, to what extent they go on to address some of the issues that the society is facing today. But the legal system here is very advanced, the judiciary is independent, groundbreaking judgments have been delivered by the Supreme Court. We all are aware of that one, we are beneficiary of that knowledge. That knowledge we must pass on to the people in Nepal. Rather than follow the leaders in Nepal, we must tell them what's going on internationally and what could be done in a constructive manner. Not with a view to teaching a lesson as a headmaster or teacher, but again in a very constructive manner. This is what we have learned internationally. We are the beneficiary of the system in that country, and we would like you to do the following in Nepal. That's where this organization can take a lead, conveying the message in a very constructive manner to the people in Nepal, society leaders, political leaders, other leaders who say that they are there to serve the nation. In the following manner, we would like you to serve the nation. That's what I think. People like you have a big challenge. All of us have a challenge, and today is the day for all of us to make a new pledge to work for the advancement of women's rights internationally and nationally. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Dr. Subedi. No wonder why the Kofi Annan, former Secretary of United Nations, had said the role of United Nations Special Rapporteur found they are the human rights activists, frontliner, and everything. Without further ado, now I would like to open up a forum. If you have any questions, questions with the panelists, Surejiसँग, Priya, and then His Excellency, हामीसँग 20 मिनट जति होला क्वेशनको लागि, त्यसकारण म यो उचाइ गर्छु है।
धन्यवाद। कसैको केही प्रश्न छ पशु छैन म आफै पनि प्रश्न गर्न इच्छुक छु मदिनाजी नाम र परिचय कला प्रश्न धन्यवाद
हजुर नमस्कार सबैजनालाई मेरो प्रश्न चाहिँ हाम्रो सङ्घीय सरकारलाई छ The thing that I want to ask is that because I mean it was a very nice presentation from everyone. I'm very thankful that honored to be here. But at the same time, when we are talking about women in different aspects, I'd like to focus more about the immigrant women over here, and I'd like to ask what would be the role and responsibility of the Nepalese embassy and the consulate over here in the US in case of the domestic violence among the Nepalese immigrant women, because these days I see more and more the women who are brought here by their own husband, married here, and then they end up in a relationship they can't get out. So how can we work together so as to end that exploitation of the women? Thank you.
Good question, but the thing is that if there are any domestic violence related issues, whether that's done by the immigrant here or one of the officials visiting the United States, most of them are dealt by the US government, and we get the information basically. In certain occasions, like in the immigration, we even don't get the information, but if we find it out from somebody else, their friends and families, we can inquire directly and they give the answer to us, the correct answer. In case of specific question of the violence, they keep it more secret, and then they tell us what is happening, where the case is, and when probably this will be resolved, the tentative time. But more than that, I think we have not done anything from the embassy. If we need to do anything, definitely I think you can give us some suggestions. We'll do it. Maybe you know better than that.
Yeah, maybe I can just share a couple of comments and suggestions that we've heard from the local organizations that we've worked with. Two things I'll just mention. One is in Congress right now, there is the Violence Against Women Act, which is going through, and that is something that comes up and it has to be reauthorized periodically. And this year in particular, it's come under attack. And it's usually seen as kind of a must-pass bill because no one wants to go and say they're not against supporting the rights of domestic violence survivors. So, it's important for different entities, whether it's community members, whether it's, other government entities, to kind of weigh in and say we support the Violence Against Women Act and make sure that there are protections particularly for immigrant women. So that's one thing I would mention. The second thing is, we've talked with some of our local partners on the ground that serve domestic violence survivors, and one thing that they thought might be useful is, it might be a small thing, but even some resources that are in the home country about if you're intending on coming to the United States, what are some local organizations you can reach out to if you end up in a domestic violence situation, so that people know that when they come here, they're not alone. There are places that they can go to, rather than feeling lost and alone and exacerbating their situation here. So there's some kind of transnational, aspect to it. A lot can be done here, but a lot can also be done back in the home country as well.
If I may add just one word, I think working together in partnership with the Nepalese embassy here, women's organizations like this one, what they can do, look at the draft legislation. Does it cover every eventuality? Every community, as you said, there are some peculiar, unique problems in the society. Do the legislation, under proposal, under consideration, cover every eventuality that you would like to be protected in your society? That's what I think they may have some role to play. Thank you.
कसैको केही प्रश्न आफ्नो नाम परिचय प्रश्न
Hello, my name is Rajni, and I work in the healthcare system here in the United States, but I've had the privilege of doing some work in Nepal with the surgeons that I work with, and I also run a charity in Sirai area. There's 3 villages that me and a couple of other friends run one for sustainable agriculture in that area, 2 for a sponsorship program for education, and 3 just in general, whatever is needed in the village. One thing, just as a healthcare worker, I did not hear, especially the statistics in Nepal, and is it even a worthy subject to discuss is to health status of women. I particularly work in orthopedic area, and when we do our missions, the healthcare status of Nepalis in general, especially the women, children, and the poor, are staggering. And is that ever part of the big picture in the United Nations or within Nepal? I know there's a staggering number, like I think 4 out of every 5 children are anemic in Nepal. So are the women, pregnant women. But these are numbers that I've heard and seen in the internet. So I'd just like you to comment on the health status of women and what is being done in Nepal, and if that would actually help to bring the status of the family, of the women of the family. And I think one thing I would definitely say is that through our 10 years of charity, we have found that you can make a village, you can improve a village by improving and empowering women. And it is only through women that we've been able to change education of the children and the economic status of the whole village. Thank you.
Probably I have a whole lot of statistics in my iPhone, but I don't want to bore you with those numbers. I think in Nepal, there are 2 significant things that has happened over the last 1 decade or so. One is Nepal is highly dependent on donor money for the development activities. So worldwide, there has been a shift from agriculture and infrastructure to social sector. That is one of the reasons why Nepal has been able to increase the budgetary allocation in education and health, despite we suffered from armed conflict. If we see our own money, our own resources going to different sectors of the economy is analyzed, I think most of the money during, let's say, 2001 and 2006 went in the security area. But even during that period, if you see the share of the total budget going to health and education has increased dramatically. Now coming back to the health area, there is one more thing that has been done in Nepal. We have formed a basket in the Ministry of Health, like the DFID, World Bank, and a number of other big donors. They put money, and then we can spend the money on the priority area. When we talk about the priority area, the government has identified 19 different types of diseases and sectors as the priority areas. That includes, as for example, maternal mortality rate. I just gave an example. We had the maternal mortality rate of 850 in 1990, and that has come down to 281 in 2006 and 7. That's a dramatic decline, and then we are thinking that probably it has even gone further down by 2010, but the thing is that we need to do survey, and the survey is done once in 10 years. The second is just like in the Millennium Development Goal, the infant mortality rate and child mortality rate. Yes, I think there are other bigger statistics like the life expectancy, but I think if we give more attention to these areas where the people are more vulnerable and we see the problem much bigger, then probably we can help in other areas of the overall the health situation of the country. So this child mortality rate and infant mortality rate has also gone down. Government has also started providing incentives for women going to hospitals and the nurses for the delivery. I think that has helped a lot. So I think statistically, talking about the national level, Nepal has done tremendous progress in these areas. But again, I think as most of us, we retain saying that there are even areas, the remote areas, some ethnic groups, probably we need to address more. Just like we were talking about Basura. I think Basura, only 30% of the children were immunized statistically. But if we see at the national level, it's 84%. So I think statistics only doesn't tell the whole story. We need to focus. I think that's the reason why Madhaviji was telling about giving money to the mother. we have a number of these programs, like providing edible oil at the household level, providing monthly stipend to the household level, especially giving to the mother. There are so many, the school feeding program, there are so many things that have been done to send the children to school. So similarly, I think we have a number of incentives in the health areas, but we need to do more, there's no doubt about that.
Since part of the question was also what has been the approach taken by the United Nations, I would like to say just a few words. The latest attempt is to make sure that healthcare approach is a rights-based approach. By taking that approach, the conclusion based on different data and information is that women and the weakest of the weak in the society will benefit more. Not only accepting international treaties, but devising different ways and means of implementing them in a country concept. I will give you an example. I co-chair a very old INGO called Britain-Nepal Medical Trust. It was established about 46 years ago by a group of British medical doctors in Nepal, which now has operation in 23 districts. I co-chair that organization with Dr. Gillian Holsworth. And we, about 3 years ago, decided to change our approach altogether. It's not just providing medical care, but also making sure that our approach was a rights-based approach. That's the approach that these days advocated by the World Health Organization, and World Health Organization is working in partnership with the United Nations Office of High Commissioner. So the whole approach has to be changed, and the approach should take into account the obligations of the country and exploit the opportunities that are there to address the challenges that the country is facing. Thank you.
प्रश्नका लागि सिधै आफ्नो नाम लिनु
म प्रश्न हाम्रो डाक्टर सुवेदीलाई सोध्न चाहन्छु कि अहिले नेपालमा धेरै नारीहरूमा हुने वुमन भाइलेन्सको कुरा भइरहेको छ। जस्तै हिजोलाई इक्जाम्पल्सहरू एउटा डिआइसीले आफ्नो श्रीमतीलाई मारेको, पोक्सीको आग लगाएर होइन हामीहरूलाई विभिन्न किसिमको दुःख दिएको र नारी लेस्बिकनहरूको घटनाहरू नेपालमा जुन भइरहेको छ भने यो अमेरिकामा जुन ANWA जस्तो वुमन अर्गनाइजेसनले यस्तो कुरालाई कसरी उठाउँदा इफेक्टिभ होला तपाईँको विचारमा?
Thank you for that question, which was a good question. Yes, indeed, organizations like this one, in my opinion, many of us in this room are the elite of the society. Once you regard yourself as a member of that elite group, you have a responsibility. The title and the privilege should come with responsibility. So one of the responsibilities that the organization has or could do, yes, they are already doing commendable work, would be to look at the situation and carry out a detailed study. That can be done from here or from any of the, working in partnership with any of the institutions here, Washington DC, New York. There are half a dozen or so universities, carrying out some detailed study of the situation in Nepal, what's the international trend, what's the real situation in Nepal. As you rightly pointed out, some of the horrendous incidents that have taken place in the recent past make all of us rather shameful of the situation. So in the 21st century, events like this, not just punishing one individual, but the whole mindset. Why is it happening? What's wrong in the society? So digging deep into the habits, attitudes of the people and coming up with some proposals for societal reform, legal reform and other forms of reform. Some sort of critical studies. Research institutions could be made part of that one. In the UK, we have 1 or 2 projects going on at the moment on behalf of the institution, again, Britain-Nepal Medical Trust, to look at some of the societal issues in the country. The British have pumped in so much money, but still some of the results are not as encouraging as they should be. So there is now brainstorming session, what's gone wrong here? So we need to revisit the issues. So the time has come for us. These 1 or 2 incidents have opened up us to the fact that there are things like this happening and we ought to address collectively. I think working as a think tank, looking at the issues in much more detail and in a more robust manner, research-oriented approach. And from that one, whatever research findings we may have, sharing with the people in Nepal. Thank you.
धन्यवाद विजयजी. Thank you everybody. Now I would like to welcome ANWA Vice President Sunita Sirapuri for the thank you note. And thank you, Dr. Sudhiri, Dr. Osama, and Ms. Wati. We really had a wonderful interaction program. And as an organization, I think what you all have suggested, what ANWA should be doing moving forward, being a country of such a privilege, we certainly have thousands of things that to do to create awareness, help women here, and as well as give some advice, direction, or some issues back in Nepal. Ms. Sunita Sirapuri.
Thank you. नमस्कार सबैजनालाई तपाईहरु सबै पुस्तकको बावजुद पनि आज आउनुभयो स्पेशली हाम्रो एजेन्सी डाक्टर शर्माजी अनि डाक्टर सुवेदीज्यू प्रिया thank you for coming, giving your time and your valuable input to all of us. एउटा कुरा के भन्न चाहन्छु भनेदेखि अहिले धेरै कुरा आयो, धेरै कुरा हामीले सुन्यौं बुझ्यौं हैन। दुईटा छ, एउटा चाहिँ हामीले गर्नुपर्ने नेपालमा गर्नुपर्ने काम र एउटा हामीले यहाँ डायस्पोरा भएर गर्नुपर्ने काम। त्यसमा चाहिँ नि नेपालमा गर्नुपर्नेमा पोलिसी लेभलको कुराहरू भयो, त्यो चाहिँ नि गर्ने भनेर। अब यहीँ गर्दाखेरि जस्तो घरेलु हिंसाको कुरा जुन छ नि, अब हजुरहरूले कति बुझ्नु भएको छ, घरेलु हिंसाको एनवामा हामीहरू चाहिँ नि अब अहिले ओपनली कन्फिडेन्सियलिटीको कारणले हामी केसको नाम भन्दैनौँ, तर हामी कहाँ यति धेरै घरेलु हिंसाको केस यहीँ भइरहेको छ। अब हामीले नेपालसम्म जाने त्यो बोक्सिलाको त्यहाँ अरू जुन हाम्रो सिस्टर अर्गनाइजेसनहरू हुनुहुन्छ, जहाँ हाम्रो दिदीबहिनीहरूले अरू त्यो एनजिओ चलाएर बसिराख्नु भएको छ, काम गरिराख्नु भएको छ, उहाँहरूको लागि छोडिदिउँ भन्छु। म त यहाँबाट इन्टरफेयर नगरौँ भन्छु, मेरो चाहिँ पर्सनल ओपिनियन हो। त्यहाँ यति धेरै सङ्घ संस्थाहरू एनजिओहरू हुनुहुन्छ, उहाँहरूलाई त्यो छोडिदिउँ। हामी यहीँ केन्द्रित हौँ, हामी यहाँ बसिरहेछौँ, भोलि हाम्रो फ्युचर यही छ, हामीले यहाँबाट इन्फ्लुएन्स गर्न सक्छौँ, हामी केही सुधार सल्लाह दिउँ। तर यहाँ जुन घरेलु हिंसा भएको छ नि, त्यो चाहिँ असहनीय छ। त्यो चाहिँ किनभने अघि मेन्सन पनि गरिसक्नु भएको छ हजुरहरूले, यहाँ आइसकेपछि यहाँको जुन यो कन्ट्री अफ द ल भन्नुभयो नि, युके कन्ट्री अफ द ल अमेरिका पनि हो। यहाँ तपाईँले ड्राइभर लाइसेन्स लिएर त्यसको ल अनुसार फलो गरेर तपाईँले गाडी चलाउनुहुन्छ भने तपाईले त्यही ल फलो गरेर तपाईँले आफ्नो घरमा तपाईँको श्रीमतीलाई, तपाईँको छोराछोरीलाई तपाईँको प्रिभिलेज किन नदिने? तपाईँ किन हिस्ट्री तपाईँ हिस्ट्री चलाउनुहुन्छ भने तपाईँले त जानु पर्यो फर्केर नेपालमा, जहाँ त्यो ल छैन, अथवा तपाईँले मिसम्यानेज गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ त्यस्तो ललाई, जहाँ तपाईँले चाहिने त्यो के अरे करप्सन गरेर आफ्नो केस दबाउन सक्नुहुन्छ। तब तपाईँ यहाँ आइसक्नु भएको छ भने प्लिज फलो द ल। हामी केही भन्दैनौँ, तपाईँहरू चाहिने तपाईँले चाहिने रेस्पेक्ट गर्नु भएको छैन घरमा भन्ने कुरा त आफ्नो ठाउँमा छँदैछ, तर तपाईँले एटलिस्ट रेस्पेक्ट यो ललाई गर्नुहोस् जुन देशमा तपाईँ आएर बस्नु भएको छ। त्यो कुरा चाहिँ प्लिज गरिदिनु भयो भने त्यो चाहिने धेरै ठुलो सहयोग हुन्छ। यो घरेलु हिंसाको जुन चाहिने आए दिन हामी कहाँ रिपोर्टिङ हुन्छ र आए दिन हामीले एउटा न एउटा समस्याको बारेमा हामीले कुरा गरिराख्नु परेछ, बन्दिदारलाई भन्नु परेछ, अरू आइपिएलआरलाई भन्नु परेछ, अरू संस्थालाई हामीले चाहिँ घरेलु हिंसाको बारेमा हामीले रिफर गर्नु परेछ। कम्तीमा त्योसम्म चाहिँ हामीले गर्नु नपर्यो भने पनि एउटा चाहिँ यो हुन्थ्यो। त्यस हुनाले घरेलु हिंसा चाहिँ अहिले नेपाली समाजमा, नेपाली कम्युनिटीमा यहीँ धेरै छ, प्रशस्त मात्रामा। त्यस हुनाले गर्दाखेरि एउटा म यो कुरा क्लियर गराउन चाहन्छु यहाँहरूलाई होइन। अर्को कुरा चाहिँ नि अब एनवा जस्तो संस्थाले के गर्ने भनेर भन्दाखेरि अब एनवाको बारेमा अघि नै साथीले भनिसक्नुभयो, विष्णुजीले पनि भन्नुभयो, माधवजीले पनि भन्नुभयो, हामीहरू कोठे संस्था हो, कोठाबाट आफ्नो ल्यापटप र कम्प्युटरबाट काम गर्ने संस्था पर्यौँ है। अब कसैको सबैजनाको फुल टाइम भनौँ न आफ्नो आफ्नो पर्सनल काम छ। हामीहरू आखिर 2005 हामी नै दिने चिनेको 4-5 जना मान्छे जो नेपालमा पनि काम गर्थ्यौँ, यहाँ आएर फेरि भेला भएर फेरि यो संस्था सुरु गरेको भनेपछि नेपाली कम्युनिटी नै यहाँ 40-45 वर्षभन्दा बढी पुरानो छैन। फर्स्ट फेजको मान्छेहरू एक त अवेरनेसको कुरा गर्नुभयो अघि डाक्टर सुवेदीले, अवेरनेसको कारणले गर्दाखेरि पनि अब युनाइटेड नेसन कहाँ थियो, के थियो, स्विजरल्यान्डमा छ, न्युयोर्कमा छ, त्यो धेरै थोरै मान्छेलाई थाहा छ। त्यस हुनाले गर्दाखेरि यसको इन्टरनेसनल ट्रिटी कभनेन्टहरूको बारेमा, सिडको बारेमा थाहा पाउने मान्छे पनि अहिले पनि मेरो विचारमा चाहिँ कमै छन्। त्यस हुनाले गर्दाखेरि यहाँ यति धेरै 70वटा अर्गनाइजेसन छन् डिसी मेट्रोपोलिटन एरियामा। एनवाले मात्र इन्टरनेसनल वुमेन्स डे त्यो पनि 2008 देखि मनाउन थाल्यो, किन अरू कसरी मनाएन योभन्दा अगाडि? त्यस हुनाले गर्दाखेरि अवेरनेसको कुरा छ, अवेरनेसको कुरा त हामी आफैले सिक्नुपर्ने कुरा हो। डायस कम्युनिटी जबसम्म अवेर हुँदैन तबसम्म कसरी केही इन्फ्लुएन्सियल पोलिसीको कुरा गर्ने? त्यस हुनाले गर्दाखेरि मलाई कस्तो लाग्छ भनेदेखि यो कुरामा पनि हामीले चाहिँ यहाँ चाहिँ हामीले ध्यान दिनुपर्ने कुराहरू यो पनि एउटा छ। त्यस हुनाले गर्दाखेरि अब म धेरै कुरा गर्दिनँ, समयको पनि पाबन्दी छ। मलाई थ्याङ्क यू भन्न आँटेमा मलाई मनमा लागेको कुरा चाहिँ भनिहालेँ जस्तो लागेर भनिहालेँ। अब खास गरी स्पेसल हाम्रो मिडिया नेपाल.com र सगरमाथा टेलिभिजन आउनुभयो, उहाँहरूलाई धेरै धन्यवाद छ। अनि अरू त्यसो परिक्रमा पनि हुन्छ, सरी गोविन्दजीले मलाई फेरि घरबाट त्यहाँ बाहिरबाट निस्किन दिनुहुन्न। त्यस हुनाले गर्दाखेरि अरू पनि कोही आउनु भएको छ भने र अरू सबैजनाले चाहिने हाम्रो निम्ता स्वीकार गरेर आज आएर यो प्रोग्राम गरिदिनु भयो। यो प्रोग्रामको बारेमा म एउटा अर्को पनि कुरा भन्न चाहन्छु। यो ऊ गर्नुभन्दा अगाडि के भनेदेखि यति धेरै संस्था भइसकेपछि नि अब यो अघि अवेरनेसको कारणले हो कि के हो, हरेकचोटि हामी एनवाले प्रोग्राम गर्दा हाम्रो रक्षा 2-3 चोटि आइसक्नु भएको छ हाम्रो प्रोग्राममा। त्यो 30-40 जना भन्दा संख्या कहिले बढाउन सकेन रक्षा, के गर्ने, कसरी चाहिँ घर घरमा पुग्ने, त्यो चाहिँ बुझ्न सकेका छैन होइन। अब हामीहरूले राम्रो काम गरेका छौँ भनेर हामीलाई राम्रो काम गर्ने संस्थामा गर्नु छ यहाँको संस्थाहरूले भनेको सुनेको छु है। अब हामीले फ्री हेल्थ क्लियर 6 वर्ष भयो चलाउन थालेको, चाहिँ अनइन्स्योर्ड नेपालीहरूको लागि हामीले महिनाको 1 चोटि फ्री हेल्थ चेक चलाएको छौँ। नेपालमा एजुकेसनको प्रोजेक्ट चलाएको छौँ होइन, काम पनि गरिरहेको छौँ। तर यो 40-50 जना भन्दा बढी मान्छेलाई हामीले चाहिँ यो कन्भिन्स गर्न नसक्दाखेरि आफ्नै क्षमतामाथि चाहिँ अब क्वेसन मार्क आएको छ। त्यसमा कसरी यो चाहिँ अडियन्सलाई कसरी इन्फ्लुएन्स गर्ने, कसरी उहाँहरूलाई चाहिँ यो हाम्रो मेसेज पठाउने, यो टेक्निक चाहिँ अब हामी महिलाबाट मात्रै भएन, पुरुषहरूको पनि यसमा चाहिँ 100% चाहिँ सहयोग चाहिँ चाहिन्छ। त्यस हुनाले गर्दाखेरि अरूको चाहिँ अब अन्तिममा आज हामीलाई चाहिँ यहाँको चिया चमेनाको व्यवस्था गरिदिनु हुने राजा रेस्टुरेन्ट र घरे कबाबले चाहिँ हामीलाई चाहिँ व्यवस्था गरिदिनु भएको छ। उहाँहरूलाई धेरै धेरै धन्यवाद। जे भए पनि उहाँहरू नआए पनि हामीलाई चाहिँ त्यो एउटा व्यवस्था गरिदिनु हुनाले त्यहाँसम्म म्यासेज पुगेको छ भन्ने कुरा चाहिँ थाहा छ। त्यसो कारणले गर्दाखेरि थ्याङ्क यू सबैजनालाई।